We're checking in here with the first ever episode of the Fueled by Passion podcast. My name is John Archibald from Resolution Promotions. Checking in with us today, we have Coach Anthony Rodriguez, who's going to walk us through a story of how he, as himself, was a fighter and worked his way through the boxing industry and now is a prominent trainer within the industry and also a well-known face and has hit a level of status within the game as well. And some of the methods he's kind of used to develop that brand and things you could probably share with your own type of business. But first and foremost, let me go ahead and bring Coach Anthony into the mix. Coach Anthony, how you feeling out there?
I'm good, man. I'm good. How are you?
Definitely feeling good. Definitely appreciate you coming on this first episode with us. And for everybody out there who does not know, Coach Anthony and I have known each other for about 6 or 7 years now. So amongst the two of us, we've really gotten to, watch each other's journey and play a role in each other's journey. So that's kind of been a really, great thing to sit there and watch, your friend evolve through things and kind of see where we both started from and where we're both at to now. And it really kind of gives a lot of excitement on what the future could hold. But, Anthony, if you have a few minutes, why don't you kind of just, let people know how you got where you are today and, kind of let's take it all the way back, and not to stereotype you. Anthony is Puerto Rican, so that means by law he has to be a boxing fan. So that's kind of where it would start at. But take it all the way back, Anthony. What originally turned you on to the game?
All right. Well, I grew up in New York City. And in New York growing up, man, you could say slap boxing was something that we all like to do. It was something that we used to do, like a recreational thing we did, everybody in the neighborhood. Sometimes slap boxing would become something where the whole neighborhood would get involved. So, I was always pretty good at slap boxing. There was guys who used to fuck me up. And, oh, can I curse on this, man, by the way? I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. We're gonna spit it real on this podcast.
Okay, all right. So there was guys that would, whoop my ass slap boxing. I could whoop a lot of people's ass slap boxing. So right off the bat, naturally, I thought I could fight. I was getting into a lot of trouble in New York. I got arrested at a young age and a lot of things was going on. And eventually, my family decided that they wanted to move to Florida. So when I moved down to Florida with them, basically to get out of New York City because, they didn't want to live there anymore. They didn't want me to continue living there. I didn't know anybody in Florida. So when I first moved to Florida, I said, I want to get into boxing, And I've never naturally been like a super ripped guy or anything like that by natural genetics. So I always was like, man, I want to get rid of some weight. I want to lose some weight. And I also like to slap box and I could fight, So, I used to get in a lot of fights in school. Yeah, I've got expelled from every single school I ever went to the point where they kicked me out the district of the schools that I was going to in Queens because I really just had a short temper like that. So when I moved to Florida, I said, boxing would be something I want to do.
Right.
So then I went ahead. Yeah, so then we went ahead and we found a local boxing gym. And at the time it was called Steve Shepard's in West Palm Beach, Florida. And he was I don't even know, 3 or 5-time world kickboxing champion. And at the time, Lou Duva used to bring all his professionals there. So you had guys like Kasim Uma, Zab Judah, Andrew Galata, Alexis Trujillo. Everybody used to go over to this gym. I used to see some of the best names in boxing at the time go to this gym, Emmanuel Augustus. I used to watch these guys train, but I was very inexperienced at the time. So I'm just watching these guys train, and I'm in awe because I'm watching guys that I see on TV train, and I'm like, man, this is something I really want to do. And I ended up hooking up with a trainer there by the name of Johnny Bump City Bumpers, who was a former world champion. He actually won a world title, I believe, in 1982. And he took a liking to me, and he started to work with me or whatnot. He trained me for a bit, but he was going in and out of, he had a lot of personal issues, let's put it that way. And he was actually Kasim Uma's original boxing trainer at the time. So he had Kasim, and Kasim at the time was like 17-0. He was hot. He was on fire. So he didn't have time to really focus on me, how I wanted to be trained. So then I went ahead and I ended up leaving that gym because I wasn't getting the attention that I felt I needed. And I ended up going to a police athletic league by the name of the Boca Raton Police Athletic League. And there is where I actually started to compete. I actually had my first amateur fight, and I started to compete. I fought in the Florida State Championships. I I fought in the Florida State Golden Gloves. I fought numerous local and amateur shows, and that's basically where it started.
Absolutely. And one of the great things about boxing that, really something I love to see is everybody loves to see a success story where, somebody might have been, doing some wrongs. Like, as you were saying, you got in trouble kind of growing up. And, what boxing does is it takes a lot of people off of the streets and it puts people in the gym and it almost refocuses those things. Talk a little bit about just how boxing is, in general, a sport that, more or less, I don't think people realize how many lives the game of boxing has saved by getting them off the streets, and how that was able to kind of put you on the right path that has now led you down to becoming an entrepreneur and everything that you are today.
Well, one part that I left out on the story was when I first walked into the boxing gym, how I kind of had that New York attitude. And me moving to South Florida at the time, South Florida wasn't developed the way that it is now. So at the time, you would see like cows and stuff like that, in the barns and stuff. And I'm coming from the big city, living in New York.
You sure you're in Florida, Ant?
Yeah. West Palm Beach, man, at the time wasn't developed the way it is now. You go to West Palm Beach now and it's a lot different. At the time, back in 1999 when I first moved down there, it's a lot of open land, a lot of space. So, I went down there with a New York mentality. I've been in some of the roughest parts of the city in New York. I go down there, I'm thinking I'm tough. So when I walk into the boxing gym, they're like, "You ever boxed before?" I'm like, "Man, come on, man. I slap box. I'm from New York City, blah, 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 blah." So I guess the trainer didn't really like my attitude too much. So he ended up putting me in the ring with a kid who had just won the Golden Gloves. I'll never forget his name. His name was Jose Roman. At the time, he was probably like 140-something pounds, and I probably went down to far as probably 180 pounds. I was chubby. This kid was skinny. And I was like, all right, I get in the ring with him. I don't care. I got into the ring with this kid. John, I kid you not. I got my ass handed to me so bad. Like, it was to the point where I couldn't breathe. The kid was just hitting me with combination, pop, 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 and I'm getting hit and everything else. And at the end of the first round, the coach said, "You want to go another round?" I said, "No, I do not." But at that moment, I said to myself, I never, ever want to feel this vulnerable again in my life. I need to learn this. And basically, to get to the point that you were saying is, what it did was it humbled me. Right. It let me know there's a lot of people out there that can kick my ass, no matter how tough I am, no matter how much I think I could fight. There's always somebody out there better than you. Right. And in boxing teaches you that, pretty quickly. Especially if you're thinking about being competitive with the sport. You learn that pretty early on in your training, even from something as simple as not being able to hit a heavy bag for 3 minutes, or not being able to throw a left hook with proper form and technique when you thought you could. It just humbles you, but it also teaches you perseverance, because if you want to get good at it, you got to continue to train through it. You got to work on your conditioning. If you're getting your butt whooped and sparring, you got to continue to spar until eventually that stops, or at least you minimize it. So it just teaches you hard work ethics. The exercise itself, just the routine in general, is a tough, grueling routine that if you want to get through it, you have to persevere. And I think in business, there's no different. People open up a business and they think that, "Oh, I'm going to open up a business. The money will start rolling in a year." I thought that too. 6 years later, and I'm realizing, man, this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. But since I love what I do, I push through and I just keep going.
That's a really intelligent comparison. I haven't even put those types of connections together quite to the degree that you just were able to, kind of break it down. And it's such parallels that, the things that you obviously learned in the game of boxing that you can apply across the board. And, and just kind of to cut back with your story, when you left Florida is obviously when you moved up to New Jersey, where you now are. But talk a little bit about, when you came up here, and of course you have your own gym now in Delran, New Jersey, Big Delran, similar to New York City, I hear. But talk a little bit about once you got to New Jersey and kind of the process of what happened that ultimately led to you opening up your own gym and, kind of not only running the business there, but being obviously, the head trainer at the facility and kind of having to manage both those things. And you're still a young man at this point too, fighting's not completely out of the cards. So, talk about what kind of led to transitioning to business owner and trainer being more of where your focus was going to be.
Well, I mean, even when I was competing down in Florida, I never really accomplished anything, big as an amateur boxer.
I hear
And
that.
when I say that, and when I say that, it's because a few things. For one, I got an injury in my wrist that to this day I deal with. But now looking back on it further, it wasn't just the injury. It was also had a lot to do with how bad I wanted it. When I became, I would say 22, 23, I ended up making a lot of money doing valet parking, which eventually I started my own valet parking company. So I've been an entrepreneur before I opened up this gym for some years. So I was making money, and that kind of took a lot of my focus. And what changed my focus also was there was amateurs that I was competing with that ended up turning pro. Like, for instance, a good friend of mine at the time, his name was Ibrahim King. He actually went to the Olympic trials and did a lot as an amateur. He accomplished far more than I did as an amateur. But when he turned professional, I believe he was 6-0 at the time. And at the time, I didn't really know how professional boxing works. So I didn't know if you were 6-0, you weren't making money yet or anything like that. So he ended up asking me for a job. And when he asked me for a job, I kind of looked at it and I said, man, you're 6-0 as a professional. You fought to the Olympic trials. You're a pretty good boxer. But you're asking me for a job. And it kind of just took something away from me from boxing. And me, I always felt that I was a good boxer. I always did. And I still do believe that I'm a good boxer. I'm young enough that I can still get in the ring. But I never pushed myself to the extreme of a fighter to try to accomplish anything, because I felt if I'm not going to try to be the best, then I don't want to do it. And that's probably the main reason I never became a professional boxer, is because I always knew in the back of my mind I wasn't going to give it my all. And I just think that when I moved to New Jersey to open up my gym, I really wasn't even going to become a boxing trainer. I thought that I was going to open this business and I was just going to hire a boxing trainer. But, of course, in the beginning, when you realize things are going to cost money, you're trying to cut costs. I said to myself, man, I could do this myself. So I started teaching. But then as I started teaching and I started to enjoy the teaching and enjoying the process, that's when I kind of realized, all right, I'm not going to fight anymore. And if I'm going to teach, let me try to be the best teacher I could become.
Absolutely. And you hit on something real interesting there along the way, that, talking about the valet parking business that you had in Florida. So, the entrepreneur spirit is clearly inside of you and always has been, but, kind of quickly talk about, just how, that kind of came into, into the equation. It's, just starting and a business of that format, isn't something just anybody does. So talk a little bit about how that happened, and then how you were able to even flip that and then maximize it, and were, making profits doing it.
Well, what happened was I started off as a club promoter, and I was promoting nightclubs, and I would basically get $1 for every single person I'd get in the club. I was pretty successful at that. I was making some money for some time. So I would make maybe $200-300 on a Friday, $200-300 on a Saturday. So I'm like, man, I'm doing pretty good. Good money for 2 days of work. I'm on the nightclub scene. I'm 21 years old. I'm having fun, girls, everything else. So, I was doing that. And then all of a sudden, I ended up building a good relationship with the doorman there. And he was like, hey, man, this is what you do on the weekends. What do you do during the week? I was like, man, honestly, I don't do nothing. I was like, I make about $600 a week here. I only work 2 days a week, and the rest of the time I was just hanging out with my friends or going to the boxing gym. Actually, I'd go to the boxing gym. Not to get off course here, but even when I wasn't fighting, I always trained with boxing. So boxing was in me every day of my life from 16 to now, even when I wasn't fighting. So there was a long stretch where I wasn't competing, but I was still sparring professionals and I was still working out and stuff like that. But anyway, get back to what I was saying. I was like, I'm not doing anything. And he was like, well, why don't you give me a call in the morning, man? We need more valets at the company that I work for. I said, all right, cool. Called him, got a job at the valet company, and I worked for this company for a couple of years, and I was making good money. Then eventually they ended up saying, hey, man, would you like to do a nightclub, strip club? And I was like, a strip club? Hell yeah, I'd like to do a strip club. So then they put me at this strip club to do valet. That's when I started doing valet overnight. It got to the point where I had to eventually stop doing the nightclub promoting because I was making more money valet parking. And I was like, man, I obviously got to follow the money. So I was making good money valet parking. It got to the point where I was doing 7 days a week 12-hour shifts at a strip club. And it wasn't hard for me because the shift would start at like 5 p.m. and I'd leave at 5 in the morning. So it was easy. Yeah, it was it was a long shift, but it didn't feel like a long shift because I'd go to sleep, wake up 2, 3 in the afternoon, and I'd go to the club at night. And then it was a nightclub feel. So it wasn't like hard work for me. Right. And then eventually the owner decided that he wanted to move to Canada. So when he decided he wanted to move to Canada, that's when he asked me, hey, man, would you like to take over the locations that I have? And I was like, yeah. And I had saved up some money. So when I had saved up the money, that's when I went ahead and I started my own valet parking company. And I basically just took over, you know what I mean? And that was doing very well for me for some years. But then the main club that I had that was making me all my money, it was kind of a ghetto club, so there would be a lot of issues with the club. People would get stabbed and shot. I seen somebody get shot outside. I seen a cop shoot somebody. I seen somebody get stabbed. I actually had to be the cop I had to actually get the cop to help the guy who was stabbed. I seen guys get tasered. I had a guy pull out a gun on me. So, I mean, the club that I was at was pretty rough. It was called the Mirage Nightclub in Lake Worth, which is basically Palm Beach County. And they ended up getting shut down, to make a long story short. Right. So when they got shut down, my source of income stopped coming in. But what messed me up was my ego, because I had a good amount of money, but I was too cool to get a job. I was too cool to get a job because I was like, man, I'm not going to go work for $10 an hour. I'm used to making this amount of money every week, blah, 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 blah. And so I just didn't get a job. So next thing I know, I'm seeing all my savings decrease and just, everything's going away. All my money's going away. I'm going out on the weekends. I'm eating out every single day, 2-3 times a day. Me and my girl's not cooking no food. I'm like, yeah, I'll just order in. We'll do this, do that. Next thing you know, my money's almost gone. So now I'm like, holy smokes, what am I going to do? And then that's when my business partner, who's actually, my business partner was actually my girlfriend's father. Right. He said, hey, man, you've always been involved in boxing. He was like, why don't you come do this gym in New Jersey? And originally he wasn't going to be part of it. But then once he seen that I had it up and rolling, ready to go, he was like, I want to be a 50-50 partner. So then that's when I went ahead and we went ahead and started the gym. I don't know if I went off topic here, man. But
no, absolutely. I think that helps paint the story. It's kind of, really shows that, what it took to get to kind of where you are now. So, at the point we are in the story now, obviously you just opened up the gym in New Jersey, and this is about the time that we had originally linked up as well. And at the time I was living a little bit close to the gym, so you and I used to get together, a couple 2-3 times a week. And something we always really kind of sat down and spoke about was across digital platforms, in particular with Instagram, and of course we made a lot of videos together, and talk a little bit about how the utilizing these digital platforms, video and Instagram, have been extremely successful for you, and how you've kind of used those platforms to not only build the gym, but now you've something unintentionally originally have done is build your own brand into something quite major, to now where you go to New York to see the fights, and next thing you know, you've got to show up a day early because you book clients for the entire day. So kind of talk to me through the process of initially how you saw so much value in doing things like video and Instagram, committing to them fully, and how that's kind of helped you develop the business at the gym, and then the business of your own personal brand as well.
Well, I mean, there's no doubt that was very vital for me. And I've always had a vision of creating my own brand separate from the gym. And the reason I say that is because the gym business is a very difficult business, especially when you're in mixed martial arts gym. You're a mixed martial arts gym owner, you're a boxing gym owner. It's very difficult because people are seasonal. People want to box for a couple of months. People want to kickbox for a couple of months, MMA, whatever. People want to do CrossFit. People want to lift weights. People are seasonal. So to retain the client at a gym is very difficult. You constantly got to have a turnover, constantly got to have new people coming in. new people signing up. Because if you think that the people who signed up with you in the first year are going to be with you in the second year, you'd probably be closed down. So I always made sure that I created the Coach Anthony brand separate from the gym. And also another thing is, I always knew that I knew a lot about boxing, and I always knew that I had talent, and I always knew that I could teach fundamentals and all that stuff. I've always believed in myself that way. But I also knew that I didn't have any national titles as an amateur. I wasn't a professional fighter. I didn't have any fighting accolades to show people. Yes, I've competed. Yes, I've been in the ring and sparred some of the best fighters in the world, but that's me telling you that. There's no actual evidence of me saying, well, back in 1999, I won the National Golden Gloves like some of these other amazing trainers out there. So I said, I got to create a lane where people can actually see the value in what I'm doing and actually see that I'm not one of these gimmick trainers, and that I can actually teach. So when you started coming around, back when Resolution Sports was the main thing that you were working on at the time,
right?
You was a big vital part of my success, man. And I got to say thank you and commend you for that, man, because you used to take an hour trip over to my gym, sometimes 2-3 times a week, and you would really come out with great ideas and help me with the Mitwork videos. I remember you used to record the Mitwork videos, and I'd be up for 2 days. I couldn't wait till you finished editing it to put it out, so I could be like, yes, man, video came out. And then, the interviews and helping me get better on camera. You're probably the number one reason that I can actually talk in front of a camera, because I remember when we first started interviewing, I was, like, nervous and I was sounding crazy, and then the more practice I had in front of the camera, just me and you doing stuff from my gym, I kind of just learned to relax in front of a camera and kind of learned to just speak to the people as if it was a person in the room with me. So it was like educational, man. I learned so much, and it was such a developing part of my life, man. I needed to go through that to get to where I am right now. And, social media is the reason of my success. I mean, I've worked, I think this will be June when Tevin Farmer fights for his next world title. This will be the 4th world title appearance I'll have as a coach in a camp. I've worked with Bellator MMA star King Mo, you know what I'm saying? And numerous different fighters over the years that would have never heard of me if it wasn't for Instagram, if it wasn't for YouTube, if it wasn't for Facebook. Me putting out my work, people saying, man, I like his work. I like how he teaches. I like his Mitwork style. And if it wasn't for social media, there's no doubt in my mind nobody would know who the hell I am other than the people close to me. You know what I mean? So, yeah, you have to utilize the social media platform, especially if you're an entrepreneur and especially if you're somebody whose business thrives on a skill set. You have to show people what you can do, because there's too many people out here who know what you know. So in order for you to be different, you got to show people why you're different,
Absolutely. And first and foremost, I want to say it was two-way traffic whenever, I was able to get down to the gym. And for those people that might be confused as to why I'm not able to, is I did eventually move where I was, almost 2 hours away from Anthony. So don't get it twisted. There was never a fallout or anything like that. It just became a kind of an issue of distance. But Anthony and I are just as close today as we've always been. But I just want to say to you that, the things that we used to do together were so imperative in the development of my own brand and everything I've done and getting better at my own craft. And, we sat down when Resolution Promotions was kind of the shift when, the decision was made. That's kind of what I was going to operate under. And, those are something that we work together on so much. So you have a huge lay in the claim of this business now that I currently operate under this banner. And Resolution Sports, Resolution Promotions are mixed into one. It's the same, but, you played a vital role in all that as well. And kind of touching back on what you're saying, of course, initially it starts with at your gym, you were working with, everything from fitness clients, and, you had slowly, some pro fighters started to come through the doors to the point where then you started working corners and becoming vital parts of the camp. And, how did that kind of progression happen where, you started out doing the boxing training with, the clientele that was coming through the doors, and then, eventually the pro fighters were looking you up, coming through the doors just to get some work from you, asking if they could get you to their, to their own gym so you could do some work, and kind of how that's helped, kind of spread, your brand and you improve what you're able to do as well.
Yeah, I mean, the area that I'm located in, Delran, New Jersey, even though me and a good friend of mine, Eric Kelly, we always have a bunch of jokes about how nobody knows where the hell Delran is. You know what I mean? And, it's crazy because I'll ask people literally like a few towns over, like, hey, man, I live in Delran. They'll say, where's that? You know what I mean? So it's like Delran is one of those towns nobody's ever heard of. But the beauty of Delran is we're very close to Philadelphia. And we're very close to Camden, and we're very close to these areas where boxing is pretty big. So when I opened up my gym, I just think that my name started to buzz in the area. And at the time, there was a fighter by the name of Derek Webster that I used to work with. And he actually used to come to me, and that's when me and you used to do a lot of videos with Derek. And Derek had he still has an impressive boxing record, and he was one of the people who I really got a chance to showcase my mitt work with online as far as a professional level. So when I started working with him, I think I was with Derek for maybe 3, 4, possibly 5 fights. I can't remember. I know that me and Derek Webster had a nice little run, and we used to do a lot of videos with Resolution Sports and Resolution Promotions, and we used to put it out on YouTube. And when I used to go to these professional bouts, people would see me and stuff like that. And then eventually from Derek, it kind of went over to Hammer and Hank Lundy. And then when I started work with Hammer and Hank Lundy, I was with Hank Lundy when he fought Delorme for his first world title. I was with, I don't even know if that was for a world title. That was definitely for a belt, a pretty big belt. I can't remember. And then I was with him when he fought Mauricio Herrera. And then I was with him when he fought for his world title against Terrence Crawford. And from there,
Yep. I know what you're talking about.
Yep. So from there, me being super aggressive on social media, letting people know the things I was doing is really what led people to start to pay attention to what I was doing. Because at the end of the day, if you don't tell people what you're doing, they'll never know. And, I hate to be like that sometimes. There's times where I'm like, man, I'm going to annoy some people. Because there's people who know me, who may know me closely and like, why is he always freaking talking about what he's doing? And I probably lost followers because of it or whatnot. But at the end of the day, if you don't tell people what you are doing, how is anybody going to know? And that's my whole point on that. So what I would do is I would make sure I would bleed every situation. And a lot of times, working with professional fighters is all fun, is all good, but there's not a whole lot of money in it. You know what I mean? Unless you're in like that 1% where the guys are making a lot of money. So if I don't use the marketing from the situation, then it's a complete loss. It becomes nothing. It becomes just a total waste of time. So when I work with a guy like King Mo, who's a world-renowned MMA fighter, when I work with a guy like Hank Lundy, or, even when I work with Derek Webster, who's really only known in the local area, I would make sure that I would tell everybody and make it the biggest thing happening in my life at the moment, so people could say, damn, who's this Derek Webster guy? Well, wow, I never even, a lot of boxing fans, a lot of my followers and supporters don't even watch boxing that deeply. They don't even know who these people are, but they support what I'm doing, and they're like, okay, this is cool, you know what I'm saying? And they keep on following me and seeing what my next step is going to be. Now I got Tevin Farmer, you know what I mean? We just fought Kenichi Ogawa. That was instant chemistry. I didn't know, I had no intentions on being part of the Tevin Farmer team. I went over there to bring one of my 11-year-old, he's actually 12-year-old now, Marshall Schreiber, who's actually, he just advanced to the regionals in the Junior Olympics. And he's in 27. Yeah, and he's also the 2017 Silver Glove champion. You know what I mean? This is my fighter. This is my creation. You know what I mean? One of my kids who I'm proud of. I brought him over to spar another talented fighter at the gym that Tevin trains out of. And when Tevin saw me, he was like, yo, Coach Ant, what's up? I'm like, what's good, homie? He's like, yo, what's up? We got to chop it up on the mitts, man, post it on Instagram. I said, man, you ain't got to tell me twice. You're Tevin Farmer. Of course I'm going to hold mitts for you. And, of course, I'm going to post it on the Internet. So we did it. Next thing you know, I get a phone call from his team saying, listen, guy, Anthony, we think it would be a big benefit to the team would you like to be part of this camp for Kenichi Ogawa? And I said, absolutely. You know what I mean? Absolutely. And Tevin Farmer has been nothing but a pleasure to work with. So, you know, his team has been nothing but a pleasure to work with. Coach Chino Rivas, Rasheem Jefferson, Coach Reggie, Nick Rosario. These guys embrace me as if I've known them for years, and I know how it is working with coaches. And a lot of times coaches aren't so friendly when the new coach comes in. But these guys took me in, you know what I mean? And they're experienced professional trainers, so it just became just an instant chemistry. So, you know, like I said, Tevin would never have heard of me if it wasn't for Instagram. You know, he was a fan of my network as I was a fan of his fighting style. So it's like it worked hand in hand, you know?
And now here it is. This game of boxing is now, like you said, has had you in, world championship camps. You won your first world championship in Tevin Farmer's last fight. Anybody who knows anything about anything knows that. But Tevin will correct that and make it proper next go around. We all know that. So belts are coming. But this sport has now taken you to other countries. You know, this sport has, obviously taken you all around this country of the United States. It's now when you go into, like, for example, like you mentioned, Derek Kelly, you step foot in his gym, you step foot in other gyms in New York. It's, you've done such a good job with the branding and really utilizing the platforms that, you don't have to introduce yourself when you walk in somewhere because you've done such good, aggressive work and improve the quality of the work that you do. They say that, you grind till you don't have to introduce yourself anymore, something that you've definitely been implementing. But, did you ever think that, let's go back to when, you went down to Florida and then, progressing through, the amateur game and when you were, running the valet service in Florida, would you ever have thought that, just a few years down the road that you'd be traveling the world because of this game of boxing and the mentality that you have, that entrepreneur spirit that you had created that you might not even known that you had at that time? Did you ever think it would get to this level that it's already at, and which will obviously keep climbing as the future comes, keeps coming to you?
I don't know if I've ever thought that deep into it. I kind of was just going through motions and being myself. And, but one thing I will say is I always wanted it. I always wanted that. Like, I remember, saying to myself, I want to be that trainer who everybody knows. You know what I mean? I want to be a celebrity trainer. I want to be a guy who can train the stars, train the pros. I wanted to make a lane where being a trainer was kind of a dope thing to be, not necessarily just be like the knowledgeable boxing coach who sits on his chair with all the knowledge in his brain. I always wanted my role to be kind of like a role of, yo, that's dope, man. Like, inspire other people to want to be in training. Like, just do what I love to do, have fun, make a lot of money doing it, work with the best fighters, work with some high-profile clients, but also work with regular people and work with children. I kind of just wanted to be that chameleon guy who could just play all the roles and wear all the hats of a trainer. And so I definitely always had the ambition and the passion for it. As I got deeper in this game, a lot of things changed. Like, now I have no problem saying no to a professional fighter if he wants to work with me. There was a time where I would jump on any opportunity. Work with this fighter or work with that fighter, just because they were a pro. Now, if I don't feel a connection with you or if I don't feel like it's going to work out, I have absolutely no problem saying, no, thank you for the opportunity, but I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. Or if somebody doesn't want to pay me the money I feel like I deserve, I have no problem saying no. And because boxing for me now as a trainer, as I've gotten more experience, it became definitely a lot more spiritual to me. It became something where it's like, I have to be connected to the fighter. I no longer feel like I have to prove myself to anybody. I turned down this weekend going to do the Lomachenko fight to be with a kid, you know what I'm saying, and one of my fighters. So, I had that opportunity to get a credential and do all that stuff over there. It's not about that for me no more, even though I still want to be a successful trainer. But when I was a younger trainer, you could say the hunger for wanting to be known and everything was there. So I was pushing. And now I still push. I just think there's something different pushing me right now. Yeah, it's just something different pushing me now. I became more of a coach, you could say. I became more of a coach over the years. I really, really believe now, as a coach, like I got kids fighting regionals June 1st to the 3rd. I can't wait for that. I'm hoping I can get these kids to advance to the nationals. For me, that's more exciting than some of the professional stuff that I've done. You know what I mean? And it's because they're actually a product of my real work. And they're the guys who I really developed. A lot of these professional fighters that I work with, yeah, I get to put my twist on them, but they're developed already.
Right.
And then that's fine, and that's great. And I still want those opportunities. But at the same time, I just really appreciate the whole molding process of a fighter, you know?
Absolutely. And, as we start to wind down on this, debut episode of the Fueled by Passion podcast, if you had a message you had to give to any kids that might be out there, or young adults or older adults, because, in the day and age we live in, whatever a business or dream that someone wants to pursue, they shouldn't be, there's really no excuse to be limited by anything. Age is no limit now. We have access to everything by means of, the power of the world is in your phone. So, there's something that I love to stress to people is you have no excuse not to pursue something unless you're not willing to put the work into the pursuit of it. So if there's someone who's listening to this podcast right now, they could be involved in boxing, they could be involved in another industry altogether, but you've really struck a chord with them where they're really feeling what you're saying. What message of inspiration and what could you give to that person that might be enough to push them over the edge and really make them go get and do what they want to do? What would that message be that you would deliver to them if they were sitting right in front of you right now?
I'd say go to your closet, go up to where you keep your sneakers, and look for that Nike shoe box that says "Just do it." That's what I would do. Just do it. They really hit it on the nail with that slogan. It's like, just do it, man. Like, anything's possible. I mean, I've done everything I've ever said I was going to do in the sport. You know what I'm saying? I said I wanted to be on HBO. I've been on it. ESPN, been on it. World Title Corner's been there. Worked with some of the hottest fighters in the game, done that. I remember before I worked with Hank Lundy, I remember seeing him on television saying, man, I like this guy. I like how he fights. A week later, I met him. A couple months later, I'm working in his team. That law of attraction is real. It's really, really real. I mean, whoever came out and started talking about that, it's real. But you have to be willing to work toward it. And you also have to know that it's not going to happen necessarily overnight, even though it may feel like overnight. Honestly, it feels like overnight. I mean, I feel like it was just yesterday you was coming down and we were shooting videos, you know what I mean? It doesn't feel like a long time. 6 years going on 7 years have passed, but it really doesn't feel like that long. But it's just about know what you want. That's the first thing. Know what you want, and then just work toward it every single day. And don't be afraid. And don't be afraid, man. Just do it. You know what I mean? Don't have no fear. Fear is the number one reason most people don't do stuff. And you also may have to sacrifice. Let's just say you're a guy who wants to be an entrepreneur, or let's just say, for instance, you want to work at a nightclub, or you want to do something, but maybe your girlfriend won't like that because your girlfriend doesn't want you hanging out around girls. Well, guess what? You're going to have to sacrifice something, because if you sacrifice what you really want to do because your girlfriend may get upset, then now you don't get a chance to do that. You know what I mean? But if you sacrifice your girl being upset, now you can chase your dreams, then she got to learn to accept it when she sees the success that you're bringing in, or if somebody else tells you can't do something. You know what I mean? Like, there's just so many things. You're going to have to sacrifice. You're going to have to just go for it. You can't have no fear. And you also got to know that sometimes success isn't going to come in dollars. A lot of people don't want to put in the work because they want the dollar signs. It may not come in dollars, but it may come in a different way that can generate dollars later on. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people out there making a lot of money who are miserable every single day because they're not doing what they love, So you have to be willing to sacrifice in areas and know that this ain't an overnight gig, man. This is a lifetime lifestyle, and you just got to just do it, man, and just go for it, man. And that's the best advice I can give, man. If you really want to do it, do it. If you can't fund yourself to do it, then maybe you can only do it part-time right now, but then eventually you can do it full-time, But at some point, you definitely have to just make a decision and just do it.
Absolutely. And anybody who knows and follows you knows that your go-to is the boxing life. That's the hashtag you've been rocking with since day one. And really everything you just broke down, that's boxing life. That's whatever life it is that you're trying to live. That same mentality that Anthony just broke down is exactly how you've got to pursue and do what you're trying to do out there. And now the last question I got for you, Anthony, this is the Fueled by Passion podcast. So clearly, anyone who's been listening, here's where your passion comes from. It can, definitely see all the passion and hear all the passion when you speak. But you personally, what fuels your passion? What is it that drives you? What motivates you?
Man, I just want to be successful, man, in anything that I do. I don't like failing. I don't like losing. I just want to be successful, and I want to do it my way. I want to do it the way that I want to do it. So, I mean, I never did well working for anybody else. I never did well with somebody else giving me orders. So therefore, I know that if I don't do it my way myself, I'm not going to be happy. So, I guess you could say happiness is part of the fuel. And the fact that I don't want to rely on anybody. I just want to make sure that I'm the person who is. I like being in control of my results. I don't like anybody else, being able to say you're fired or you better do this better or else we're gonna have to replace you. No, I'd rather create my own thing, and even if that means taking a little less money in the beginning, that's what it's got to be. But yeah, that's what drives me, man. It's happiness, fear, everything, man, all put together in one,
Absolutely, as it should be, But so that's going to bring us to the close of this first episode, first podcast episode of the Fueled by Passion podcast. Coach Ant, I just want to thank you. When the concept of when I decided that this was the type of podcast I wanted to kind of start to produce and launch, you were initially the first person I thought of because it means so much more because the two of us have been on our own journeys. That's obviously been a journey together as well and really have pursued things together. And, back when we might walk in somewhere and neither one knew who either one of us was, but we always had each other's back. And something else I'm always going to say to people out there is that, you always have to pay attention to who's standing beside you when nobody's standing behind you. Because the day's going to come where you reach that level of success. You better remember those people that were there with you when everybody else didn't care, because people are going to come out the woodworks. So make sure you're paying attention to those people who are around you when you're building what you're building, because those are the ones that are really there for you, and that's when they prove their value. But I just want to thank you again. If you have any kind of closing message out there for the people, and definitely make sure to let them know, how to get you on Instagram and subscribe to YouTube channel. Let the people know how they can, start to follow your journey.
Yeah, man. If you guys aren't already following me, man, you can follow me on Instagram at Coach Anthony. I have a YouTube channel where I teach instructionals. I got it from the ground up, and I build on it. Coach Anthony Boxing. I got a website coming out very, very soon. So if you follow me on YouTube, you can keep in the loop for that. But that's about it, man. And I think you touched on the very, also the same way, man. Don't overlook the people who care about you, man. 'Cause that's the truth, man. A lot of the success, nobody talks about the people who helped them get successful. Nobody talks about the people who's been loyal from day one. A lot of people try to get all the credit and try to act like they did it by themselves. There's no way I could have did this without my girl. There's no way I couldn't have done this without my girl's father, who's my business partner. There's no way I couldn't have done this without Resolution Promotions. There's no way I couldn't have done this with all the key people who supported me from day one. So make sure you know who's close to you, man, and don't mess that up.
Absolutely. That's gospel right there. But we're going to close this out. Make sure that y'all hit that follow button on Instagram at Coach Anthony. Me personally, I'm Res Sports. The company is Res Promos. And make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube for Coach Anthony's YouTube channel. Res Sports is the YouTube channel for me, so make sure you subscribe to that as well. But one last time, Anthony, I want to thank you for sharing some time and letting the people know your story. And this is just the beginning here with the Fueled by Passion podcast. Keep rocking with us. We're going to keep bringing you some good stories. We're going to give you some motivation, and let's all, continue to build our own empires. But
thank you for having me, man. Thank you.
You got it, Ant. So that's a wrap with us. Everybody, take care of yourselves, take care of your business, take care of your people around you. Make sure you're doing what's right by the world. We out.
Boxing life.